In this video today, AOC makes a fool of herself as she criticizes Tom Homan for doing flashy Fox interviews. Now, of course, she hasn't gotten the memo on the current numbers at the border, but let's first hear what she has to say.
Every time you see Tom Homan on Fox News, every time you see Kristi Noem, every time you see these law enforcement officials doing flashy television interviews, understand that they are taking resources away from looking at human trafficking. They are taking attention and focus and real dollars and real resources away from actual drug enforcement, trafficking enforcement, actually going after and actually trying to investigate really harmful activity that is happening. And so it's harmful in every aspect.
What's harmful is that she's not even referencing the numbers to back up her statements, because as you guys can see on the screen, that's what the numbers say. So her opinion is false. And she's entitled to her opinion, which we know is unfounded and unhinged. There's no question. And this is why I always tell you, men lie, women lie, numbers don't. I'm going to get things wrong. Okay, there's no doubt about that. I'm not perfect myself, and neither is Trump. That's why it's very important to do your own research. And when we do the research, we see that she's trying to talk about something she has zero credibility on, and that is border security. Now, for me to back up even more what I'm saying, CBS went down to the border, and this is what they had to say.
It is quiet here at the U.S.-Mexico border, where illegal crossings are down by more than 90% from the same time last year. We have seen Border Patrol agents, soldiers, and vehicles and barriers, but no migrants so far. President Trump has shut down the U.S. asylum system, empowering officials to swiftly deport migrants without processing their claims. He has also deployed thousands of troops to the border and tasked the military with deportations.
You spent how long, going along the border?
About 4 hours.
And how different was this trip versus past trips
Well, we
during
did not
different
see a single migrant or asylum seeker. And typically, when we go to the U.S.-Mexico border, we at least see one group of people who are trying to cross into the U.S. illegally. We did not see a single migrant. We saw soldiers, Border Patrol agents, and National Guard troops, and vehicles and barriers, but no migrants.
So trying to smear Tom Homan is a losing strategy for someone like AOC. I believe in knowing your weaknesses and your strengths. This is a clear weakness for the Democratic Party. They should not be speaking as pertains to border security, because, again, these are the same individuals that tried to tell us that the border was secure repeatedly. And every time we questioned it, they called us what? Conspiracy theorists. And really what they're trying to deflect from is the fact that Joe Biden just refused to enforce the law. And I'm going to show you an example of that. This is an exchange between the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem and Margaret Brennan on Face the Nation, who isn't that bright, in my opinion, in regards to this topic. Watch this.
But when it comes to reviving the policy of separating families from their children at the border,
we're actually reviving it.
That's what I want to ask you.
President Biden didn't follow the law. He didn't follow the law in the fact that it's always been equally applied until his administration. And then he made decisions to ignore federal law in how he handled immigration and enforcement within our borders. And so today we're expanding our team at ICE, and we're going to have an acting director in Todd Lyons, who has a long history with Tom Homan. They have worked together to build on these enforcement operations. We're also naming a deputy secretary in Madison Sheehan that was going to be another expansion of this team. They've done incredible work cleaning up our communities and making them safer. Adding more people to the team with Todd and with Madison is going to allow us to partner with local law enforcement officials to make sure that we truly are following through on enforcing the law. And if you break our law, then there's going to be consequences.
Yeah, so what did you just hear there? You heard Kristi Noem say, well, wait a minute. We're not reviving anything. We're not making up new laws. We're enforcing the existing law that Joe Biden refused to. It's not just that they refused to enforce the law, but they told people like me and you that we're wrong for calling them out for not enforcing the law. And then to make matters even worse, they act like the border was secure, as I stated plenty of times. And I have another example where Joe Biden was not enforcing the law. And maybe AOC just needs to eat her words, because she should pay attention to these numbers, because they're heartbreaking as it pertains to securing the border and making sure Americans are safe.
You revealed that the Biden administration, I didn't believe this headline, that they deported only 8 out of 100 illegals with ties to ISIS. That can't be. I mean, I actually can't even believe that's true. 8 out of 100?
I had the same doubts that you had
when I got this information from our National Counterterrorism Center, because it is inconceivable to me to have a commander-in-chief and a president who would knowingly return those who are either known or suspected terrorists or those who had very close ties with known or suspected terrorists back onto our streets in their country. But unfortunately, it's exactly what happened. There were over 400 illegal immigrants who came from Central Asia into our country. Of those, there were hundreds who had either ties to terrorists or were terrorists themselves. As you said, the Biden administration arrested a bunch and then let them all go back into our country, other than 8. So this is where we are working very closely with the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI, with our National Counterterrorism Center, to make sure that we find them, that we remove them, and that we have the vetting in place to take this action to remove those from our country immediately who pose a threat.
But Democrats want you to believe that President Trump is the threat, that he's the person that you should be scared of, that he's not doing his job as president, that he's spending his time trying to be a king and I guess run for another re-election and stay in power because they accuse him of trying to overthrow the government. Now, as I say all that out loud, you already know it sounds ludicrous. Now, that's not me saying it, okay? Here is your favorite Never Trumper saying exactly what I just said.
Trump's what, 78, 79 years old? I have no doubt that if Trump could, he would try to run again. I think, Michael, the biggest failure of all of us during this Trump era has been the failure of imagination. We have not imagined how bad and how low he'd go. He tried to overthrow an American election 4 years ago. I have no doubt that he could try to stop the midterm elections. If he's physically able, he may try to run again in 28. This is really scary.
So let's use what they said. Let's take it at face value. Let's say everything they say is true. What's scarier to a mother of 5 children who are all still in their young ages? She has to take them to school every day. She's got to watch them. She's got to feed them, bathe them, all that stuff. What's scarier to someone like that? President Trump or inflation or migrants who are committing crimes in her neighborhood? Or organized crime and gang activity, or fentanyl. I mean, I can go on and on. Or the poor level of education that is continuing to fail her children. What's scarier, all of that or President Trump? I mean, come on. These guys, they're out of this world. They live in a different reality that's going to make sure that they continue to lose elections. I mean, that's what's really going on here, especially when they spend more of their time talking about President Trump in this way.
You know, in a weird way, you can't blame Trump for feeling like he's a king. We talk about a king. What is that? Somebody who believes they're above the law and they're not accountable. Well, you can't blame Trump. Look at all he's gotten away with, and no one's ever held him accountable. Right. And here he sits in the White House. He's got no legislative branch to worry about. The Republican Party is his. Right. Who's going to stop him? The courts, the people? He feels untouchable right now.
Now, his description of President Trump, you could say the same thing about Joe Biden. He's the one that defied what the Supreme Court told him not to do, which was to forgive student loans. He tried to anyway. So again, every time they try to talk about President Trump, you literally can just replace the word Trump and put Biden, and it's true. So again, I find that to be fascinating. But hey, please keep obsessing over him, because that means you're not obsessing over your voters. Now, this takes me to the sponsor of this video, because if you're not obsessed with your retirement and your future, then here is a reminder. Because we know that Trump's return is set to usher in a new golden age. But let's be honest, there are growing tensions with China, Canada, and Mexico, which is rattling the markets. That's why Warren Buffett just dumped $133 billion in stocks. And this is why thousands of informed IRA and 401k savers are now shielding their savings with gold. This is why you could trust the experts at Colonial Metals Group to help you do the same. So instead of you worrying about when the market may crash, you should go to freegoldguide.com/Devori or call 1-800-757-5158 so you can get a free gold guide on how to bulletproof your wealth tax-free. Plus, you can see if you qualify for a free home safe or $7,500 worth of free silver. Once again, that is freegoldguide.com/Devori or call 1-800-757-5158 or hit the link in the description below. Now, as I showed you at the beginning of this video, AOC made a fool of herself as it pertains to border security. And I believe Democrats are also making a fool of themselves as it pertains to Ukraine. The numbers say it. Americans are fed up with funding an endless war. But wait till you hear their response to all of that. Take a look.
So for the person who's watching, who just heard you say Donald Trump is not standing up for Ukraine, what do you say to the person who says, well, I don't care about Ukraine. I want Donald Trump to stand up for America. What do you say to them?
I don't know where you got that. I mean, I don't have time for it.
Yes, but we hear it. We hear it.
Here's the thing. Where did you grow up? Did you grow up in a place where you thought the Russians were the good guys? What part of America did you grow up in where they taught you the Russians were the good guys and our allies were the bad guys? That's the flip here that we need to continue to remind people. The Russians are the bad guys. They're raping women. They're killing children. They're bombing cities. The Ukrainians are the noble good guys. In some ways, they're more American than we are over the last couple of years. And we must stand with them in the same way we stood with the allies in World War II and since this country was founded. This is not just about Ukraine. This is about the core and the integrity of American values. And that's what he's also betraying. Not just Ukraine, he's betraying American values.
Isn't part of American values taking care of your neighbor, taking care of your family, making sure that the country is operating from a strong position? How are we supposed to take care of other countries if we can't take care of ourselves? It's really a simple question, but Democrats will always try to duck that question, of course. And in the name of American values and the leader of the free world, and we are a beacon of hope, we should continue to fund this endless war. Okay, it's just madness when they speak this way. Okay, now here's Lindsey Graham. He did an interview with Fox News this morning where he defended Trump's strategy on Ukraine.
We're trying to integrate our economies. We're trying to make sure that Ukraine has value to the American economy, a win-win situation. They're the richest country in Europe in terms of critical minerals, which is the oil of the 21st century. So doing a deal with Ukraine is beneficial to both countries. It's not extortion. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to do a deal with Ukraine where we can make $500 billion in the critical mineral space for our own economy, give them money, help them develop their resources so they can grow their economy and defend themselves? That's not extortion. That's a good business deal. And to all these Democrats who are worried about this deal, what the hell did you do to deter Russia from invading Ukraine? What did you do after Russia invaded Ukraine? Pretty much nothing.
And the last point that he made there, they didn't do anything. It's just like what I showed you at the beginning of this video with AOC. They didn't do anything in regards to the border. They haven't really done much of anything, but they're too busy trying to point the finger and tell President Trump what he needs to do when they were in power. So whatever they're complaining about these days, why didn't they take care of that when Joe Biden was the president? I think it's a phenomenal question. Now, here's President Trump on Air Force One telling the press what he thinks is going to happen this week as it pertains to the Ukraine and Russia war.
Look, we have to have peace. And I'm doing this. Money is one thing. We're going to lose. We spent $350 billion on this. But the big thing, human life. Thousands of people this week, thousands of young soldiers died this week. Hundreds of people died in cities in Ukraine. And we got to get it stopped. It would have never happened if I was president, and it didn't happen. This was not going to happen. By the way, October 7th wouldn't have happened. Inflation wouldn't have happened. The Afghanistan, the way not that they left, but the way that they left, it looks so bad. Probably the most embarrassing day in the history of our country. That wouldn't have happened. A lot of things wouldn't have happened, but it is what it is. I think we're going to have a good time. I think we're going to have a good result in Saudi Arabia, meaning they're hosting the various talks, and we have a lot of good people going out there, and I think Ukraine's going to do well, and I think Russia's going to do well. I think some very big things could happen this week. I hope so.
So clearly, the Trump administration is doing something to get this war to end, but Democrats don't want to focus on that, right? They want to continue to be unhinged. And yes, I have another example, because instead of them trying to find common ground on ending the Russia and Ukraine war, because it just makes sense politically, here is Jamie Raskin calling for his party to censure President Trump.
The last person who used a cane like that in the House of Representatives was Preston Brooks, who went over and beat the daylights out of Senator Charles Sumner before the Civil War. And he wasn't even censured for what he did, actually using a cane for violence as opposed just to get people's attention. And, Al Green was making a very strong, valid, substantive point, which is there is no mandate to destroy Medicaid. And the vast majority of Democrats rejected the idea of censuring him. And really, if we were censuring anybody, it should have been Donald Trump, who I don't think had been back to our chamber since he incited a violent insurrection against us. And then he used his pulpit in order to call a sitting member of the United States Senate Pocahontas. So I think a racial and ethnic slur from the president was a far greater insult to the dignity and decorum of our chamber.
So let me get this straight. Pimp Kane is racist, and calling Elizabeth Warren Pocahontas is a racial slur. And they wonder why they lost the election. I mean, you guys got to come up with something better than that. If you want to, fight President Trump on policies, by all means, go at it. That's what you're supposed to be doing. But when you guys are making up things to try to, I guess, make a point to demonize President Trump, you lose every single time. I mean, Congressman Al Green, it doesn't matter whether you want to say, well, Marjorie Taylor Greene did it too. They're both wrong. Okay, there should be a certain level of professionalism when the president of the United States is speaking. I'm with everybody on that. But to try to excuse this behavior and point fingers, again, that's why they lose. So now it's time to hear what you have to say in the comments section below. What's your reaction to what AOC said? She believes that Tom Homan and Kristi Noem doing these Fox News interviews is actually doing more damage than it is helping. I actually say that her unwillingness to admit that there was a crisis at the border did more damage. But hey, what do I know, right? Let me know what you guys think about all that in the comment section below. Now, someone who has done a lot of damage, and that is the California governor, Gavin Newsom. He's ran this state into the ground. There's no secret there. And he recently launched that podcast, and he interviewed Charlie Kirk, and he said some things that has caused the party to turn on him. If you missed out on what they had to say about Newsom and his stance on boys playing in girls' sports, all you have to do is click on that video because it's coming up right now.